We've everybody linked up at this stage, so thanks again for attending. And just to move forward and show you a little bit, what we're going to talk about today in the workshop, the areas we're going to cover, what kind of topics. So we'll start out a few minutes to give you a short insight into what we're doing with the AgriTech Cluster, and in particular the program that we're running now at the moment called AgriTeam Innovator. During today, in the breakout rooms that we'll have in our workshop, we're going to be using a piece of software called Miro. It's optional to use that if you wish. So we're going to pop a link into the Miro board now into the chat. So in your own time as we're talking, you'll be able to connect up with the Miro board and take a look there as well. Once we do that introduction on the cluster side, I'm going to introduce you to Padraig Doolan, who's going to take us through, Padraig works with Enterprise Ireland, and he's going to take us through a funding opportunity that they have. It's called the Agile Innovation Fund. That's particularly focused on innovation projects. So we'll have a short presentation from Padraig with questions and answers following that. Then we're going to have 30 minutes in breakout teams. So we're going to set up 4 different teams, and we have leaders identified for each team from the MTU, Ulster Technological University, and we'll be able to discuss together then in those breakout groups some of the challenges that are there for agriculture, some of the technology opportunities that could be developed into an innovation project. That's what we'll do when we come back. We'll look at what's been uncovered in that discussion and that challenge in the last section here, the ideas for innovation projects. We'll have an update from each team when they come back into the main room, okay? And then our final topic is where we're going to have a discussion with 2 companies, SAMCO and Cotter AgriTech, and we're going to discuss their experiences with the Agile Innovation Fund and also how that's helped them to realize an innovation project. So as we go through, I guess just to be aware, if you have any questions, feel free to pop those in on the chat. Also, you're able to come in. You see some people coming in already there in the audio, so feel free if you'd like to raise your hand or come in the audio at any stage for any question. That's absolutely fine as well. So I'm going to talk to you for a few minutes, very short slides here around the AgriTech cluster and what we're doing with the cluster. So essentially, we're a cluster of interested stakeholders in agri-tech across Ireland coming together. We're funded by Enterprise Ireland through the RTCF clustering fund. There are 12 such clusters now being set up across Ireland in different sectors. We're hosted at the Munster Technological University, and having that, then we have close relationships with the IMAR Research Centre. So we're partnering in the delivery of programs with IMAR, and we're also partnering with the ACE AgriTech Centre of Excellence to bring you today's workshop together with IT at Cork. And with these partners, we're developing a range of programs to help, I suppose, to deliver on our aim as a cluster to accelerate the sustainable growth of Ireland's agri-tech sector. So what do we want to do as a cluster and who's involved? So I guess looking at our attendees here in the workshop today, we have people, from industry, we have people coming from community and government interests. We also have a range of different knowledge providers across research, across education providers, all coming together. And what we're looking to do in the cluster is find areas of common interest. So these sort of overlaps here that are represented on this slide. And we're using, I suppose, the chance to have workshops like this, meetings, and identifying projects that make sense, that can add value to the agri-tech sector across these overlap areas. So in our breakout groups today, there are people coming from all sides here, and it'll be interesting to see the discussion around innovation. Innovation is one of our key focus areas within the cluster, and we're looking at how we can, I suppose, stimulate more innovation across product and service and business processes as well, through connecting people, connecting teams, and using the collaboration focus that we have in the cluster. Part of that, we have a new program that we're running at the moment. This workshop is one part of that program, where we're looking to find, I suppose, areas of opportunity. So we're looking at the agricultural challenges. What are the technology opportunities that can help agriculture today to mitigate, I suppose, climate change issues, to help prevent, you know, and to be able to produce more food with less as such, right? So I suppose we're looking at where we can have some alignment, where we can uncover some projects to help us, to help the industry grow. So in terms of how we're running this program, we have we've set out an approach. We're taking 3 phases to that. So we see here: concept, develop, and validate. And what we're focusing on today in the workshop here, I guess, is more the concept phase. So we're looking to get to a point where we can say what sort of opportunities are there for a collaborative project. Maybe it's maybe a project one-to-one with a company. And we look then, after we prioritize some projects, we look at how we can develop those and validate them, and then deliver, I guess, an actual project proposal that may go for funding. So some of the key supports we're looking to bring, I suppose, as part of this program is facilitating workshops like this, connecting interested teams together, and using a best practice approach in this, I suppose, in terms of this opportunity identification process. The program itself is funded by Smart AgriHubs. Smart AgriHubs is a European project looking to, I suppose, grow services across the agri-foods industry. So we've got some support from Smart AgriHubs to help us to deliver this, this program. So one of the things to mention, I suppose, as well, just to give you a little bit more detail in terms of where we are before we go into our breakout rooms today, I'd like to take you through this process a little bit. On the left side, so it works sort of from left to right here on the screen as you're looking at the screen. Today we're having a discovery workshop. In parallel with the discovery workshop, we also are running and plan to run more one-to-one company workshops. And we see these as 2 ways of identifying ideas for innovation projects. Once we do that, we plan to develop this hopper here, as you see on the screen, and we'll prioritize the ideas in terms of innovation projects. Based on that priority, then with the resources we're assigning in the program, we'll progress through a development and validation activity here. And once we've identified an innovation project, we'll identify, do we need external funding or not? In a case where there's no need for external funding, it might be a direct project with a company, then that's fine. Where we need maybe external funding, or where we can connect external funding, we can support with the writing and submission of a proposal there. So I guess as I mentioned, funding, I'd like to move now to the next part in the agenda, and we'll introduce you to Padraig Doolan. Padraig works with Enterprise Ireland. He's the technical advisor for the Agile Innovation Fund. He's a lot of experience in the innovation practice, business development, commercialization. You'll have the opportunity to ask him some questions shortly. He's coming from a biotech research background. He's been involved as well in a digital analytics startup. So Padraig's going to take us through some slides now on funding opportunity here. And you can ask questions at the end of his slides. If any of those questions come to mind during the presentation, please pop them into the chat. So, hi, Padraig.
Thanks, Kieran, and lovely to be here and to be seeing so many attendees. And I noticed Vincent Farley joined there, and Vincent and I know each other well. We worked together on a project, a biotech project, a couple of years ago. So thanks for your time today, everyone. As Kieran mentioned, my name is Padraig Doolan. I'm the technical advisor to the RD&I Fund at Enterprise Ireland, and I'd like to take 10 minutes of your time today to talk about the funding opportunities that are available for you at Enterprise Ireland, and in particular, one particular offering, Agile Innovation, which is particularly suited to you. So the Agile Innovation Fund at a high level is focused on the development of new or substantially improved products, services, or processes where the total project cost is less than €300,000. And I'm going to come back to that 300K limit in a couple of minutes. And one important distinction I'd like to point out for you, some of you may be familiar with other offers from Enterprise Ireland, like innovation vouchers or even the innovation partnership, say, for example, where you might be thinking of working with a university. This particular fund, the Agile Innovation Fund, that's aimed at companies like yourselves who want to do the R&D themselves. And I'll talk through the eligible costs, and you see you can bring in consultants, you can bring in universities if you like, but it's really focused where you want to take that step yourself and you're going to be the one driving the R&D. And next slide, please, Kieran. So we know that many of you are probably struggling right now with the effects of Brexit, for example. I wouldn't be surprised at all if that is still depressing prices and sales for you. And of course, COVID has impacted all sectors of the economy, and I'm sure that's having a negative impact as well. And we want you to know that at Enterprise Ireland, we're very cognizant of that. And you might be thinking, you don't have time for R&D. Well, the reality is, if you take that approach, you're really letting money on the table. And to buttress that point, we looked at a group of almost 500 companies that had availed of our R&D supports over the last 10 years. And they're represented by the green bars there. And we compared them to a group of 714 companies, similarly segmented, that didn't access R&D supports. And the differences between the two groups, it was striking, really. Even if you just looked at domestic sales, companies that engage in R&D have more than 60% higher domestic sales than companies that don't. But the big advantage was actually in the exports. And in one way, this wasn't that surprising, because in order to qualify for R&D funding, you have to have an export focus. You don't need to be exporting right now, but you have to intend to export by the end of the project. Companies that availed of our R&D supports had almost 6 times the number of exports as companies that didn't. You combine all those two together, companies that do R&D with support from Enterprise Ireland have more than triple the turnover and more than twice as many employees in full-time employment. So this is a real opportunity that is available for you. Next slide, please, Kieran. So the Agile Innovation Fund, the proposals that come into us fall into one of two categories. So if your new idea is a new product or service, or new or improved product or service, then it's suitable. It could be suitable as an Agile application. And the supports for Agile proposals, if you're a small enterprise, are 45% rebate. Now, they're smaller for 35% for a medium enterprise, 25% for a large. But if you're a small enterprise, and I remember at the beginning, I said that the maximum project cost for 300K, that's €135,000 that we can hand you back upon the completion of your project. The eligible costs you can put in are the salaries to deliver the project, so you can offset whatever proportion of your salary costs for your staff to deliver on it. We levy 30% overhead on those salaries, so that's effectively money you can spend on whatever you want. You don't need to account for it. We anticipate you'll have materials costs for prototyping or validation. You can put those in as well. And if you identify that you've got any skills gaps in your team, you can fund them through consultancy. We also anticipate that you're likely to incur travel and subsistence costs. And then finally, if you're in a well-regulated industry, you may well have certification or even clinical trials costs. They're all allowable as well. Next slide, please, Kieran. So at this point, hopefully you're here in the workshop and you've got an idea and you're wondering whether it's R&D or not, whether it will make the grade. Well, a typical R&D project will usually involve the development of a new product or service, and it'll usually involve the acquisition of new knowledge and skills. And it'll frequently, although not always, involve prototyping, testing, and validation of those new or improved products or services. A key thing for us, it cannot be just routine changes made to your existing product, services, or processes. It has to be a substantial step up in R&D capability for the company. And then the final piece for us is that there's got to be some small measure of technical uncertainty and risk in the development. And we're comfortable with that. We want to see that upfront. Next slide, please, Karen. A variation on the proposals that come in would be if your idea is a new process. That's where you're seeking to improve the efficiency of your company. And I'm going to talk you through a couple of examples in a minute. So if you're thinking of increasing efficiency, a new internal process, then your idea could be suitable as a business innovation proposal. And the outcome we expect to see here is a new or substantially improved production or business process. And a lot of examples we see here would be digitization, for example. A big benefit of this fund is that, this offer is that the rebate is 50%, no matter the size of your organization. So remember, the maximum project cost under Agile is 300K. That's 150,000 we can hand back to you. And all the same costs that are eligible for Agile are eligible for this offer as well. Next slide, please, Kieran. So the business innovation offer then builds on the principles of the R&D, and business innovation proposals, they fall into either process innovation or organizational innovation, or sometimes a combination of both. So a process innovation is where you're seeking to implement a new or significantly improved production or delivery method. So a good example of that would be where you've got a factory, you've got a conveyor belt system in that factory, and you've got a defined series of steps in that conveyor belt system. And you know that process inside out. You know how fast to run it, you know how many staff you're going to put on it, you know the order of the steps, you know if you put in defined input X, you'll get defined output Y of a particular quality. And you know that process so well, you've come up with a creative way to maybe rearrange some of the steps. And by doing so, maybe you are able to drop some of the steps. And you're going to have, maybe you're going to speed up the process. Maybe you're going to increase the efficiency. Maybe you're going to raise the quality of the output, or you could even just be improving workplace safety, for example. And you know that in order to show that your new process is just as good as or better than your old process, you're going to have to do some batch runs. You're going to have to put dedicated staff on those runs. You're going to consume resources. And if you're in a highly regulated industry, you're going to have certification costs at the end to show that the output of your new process is just as good as or better than the output from the old process. That's a lovely process innovation proposal right there. Organizational innovation then, that's where you're seeking to implement a new organizational method in your business practices, your workplace organization, or even in your external relations, for example. So a nice example that we see a lot of is digitization. So let's say you've got a paper-based method in your company, say to do with staff resourcing, and it's labor intensive and it's error prone. And when those mistakes happen, people aren't being brought in to work on time, and it's having a negative impact on output. And you've identified that you want to move to a digital solution, get rid of all these hang-ups. You don't even need to develop the digital solution yourself. It could be an off-the-shelf product once it needs significant customization and further development in order to fit it into your business practices. That's a really, really nice organizational innovation proposal. Next slide, please, Karen. So hopefully you came here today because you've identified a product opportunity or you've identified a problem to be solved. You have a creative idea. By now, I hope you know that whether it's R&D or business innovation, what you're wondering what the next steps would be. Well, we would always say, talk to your local development agency. Now that could be your local LEO, you could be a client of EI or a client of Uderos. Talk to your development advisor or CEDO and pitch the idea to them. But even if you're not a client of any of those agencies, you can still take the next step. And what we would always recommend then is download our outline proposal document. So this is a 2-page document, and I'm going to send it to Kieran at the end of the workshop, and he's going to make these slides available to you in an email, and we can include the outline proposal as well. And that's a really straightforward document. It'll take you less than an hour to fill out. I call it 2 pages, and it is, but a half of the first page is instructions. So there's very little in it. And you just sketch out your idea in that proposal document and send it back to us for feedback at the email at the bottom of the slide deck there. And I'll give you feedback within a day or two on whether I think it qualifies and where we should go next. And if we're all in agreement that you should proceed, I'll point you in the direction of whether it's a BI or an Agile, and then you should proceed with the full application. And the full application, is easier than you think. It's essentially broken into 2 parts. One line is the online application wizard, and that's going to look for an overview of your company. It's all stuff really that is in your business plan. And we'll also look for an overview of the project as well as a detailed breakdown of the project costs. And the second part of the application is the project plan. And that's a 6-section Word document. And that's going to look at the problem, your solution, why it's innovative, where are the risks, and then the work plan, what are you going to do, and the team, who's going to do it. And that's enough information that lets a tech assessor validate if your project is eligible under EU state aid regulations, are your costs reasonable, and is there a clear R&D element, that risk piece I was talking about earlier. Next slide, please, Kieran. You might also be wondering then, well, okay, I know my idea, whether it's R&D or BI, I know the process, but really how hard is it to get this money? Well, you'd be surprised at how straightforward this whole thing is. Last year, we had 94 applications to the fund, represented by the blue bar there, and 86 of them, were approved. So that's an approval rate of over 90%. And of the ones that weren't approved, they're represented by the yellow bar there. Most of the time, all of the time, we are working with the applicants in order to get them over the line. Now, not every application gets over the line, but the vast, vast majority do. So the reality is, if you've got a halfway decent idea and you put in a reasonably decent proposal, you are going to get this money. Next slide, please, Kieran. So after the workshops, we're going to hear from Nick in Cotter AgriTech, and we're going to hear from Robert in SAMCO Systems. I won't steal any of their thunder, but they're past recipients of the Agile Innovation Fund, and they've got really compelling story to tell you. And I won't take any more from them, but that's coming at the end of the workshop. And then finally, this is the final wrap-up slide from me. All the contact email details are there, the phone number, a link to our website. We've also got downloadable sample application forms and the project plan. So if you click on those links, you'll actually see a kind of a typical application, what it looks like, and it also included some links to more case studies there. If I can leave you with one sentiment, it's to not hide your light under a bushel any longer. Please do reach out to us, download and fill in the outline proposal document, send it in to us, and let's get you started on that R&D journey. Thank you for your time. And happy to take questions from either from the chat or, just turn on your camera and speak up.
Great stuff. Thanks for that, Padraig.
Just Padraig, Vincent here. I'll drop you an email and we'll profile one of our projects.
Great stuff, Vincent. Yeah, be delighted to be working with you again.
Thank you.
Hope you're keeping well.
All fine. Yourself.
Good.
Yeah, the Cox here. You mentioned about the funding being available when the project is completed. What about ongoing costs? How do you cover those for on the research and development?
Sorry, Alfie. The fund is only available to applications that come in before the work starts.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry. Okay. Sorry. What was your question?
My question is, do you have to wait till you're finished before you get to funding?
No, sorry, you don't.
That's
no, you can build in. You can build in up to 3 drawdown points during the proposal. So let's say your project is coming in at 300,000. You could draw down at the 100K stage, draw down 45,000. And again, at the 200K stage, draw down your second 45,000. So that can be built in. You don't have to spend it all up front.
Do they have to be specified when you're making the application for the R&D funding?
Yes, you do. Yeah.
Okay.
It's built into the process. Yeah.
It's 50 years since I was involved in that, but the paperwork but we used to do a monthly return in those days.
Right. Okay. No, it's not as onerous as that anymore. In fact, Agile was set up to be speedy, not only a fast turnaround, but to kind of be speedy at all elements, and to kind of aid you guys in doing your R&D efforts, and to not bury you in paperwork as a result of it.
But thank you.
No problem. You're very welcome. Anything else from the chat, Kieran?
Just keeping an eye out there, Padraig. Just one question that comes to mind, I suppose, as you were going through your slides, is if you say you're managing the project, it's an internal project. If there are some elements that you cannot do yourself, is there an opportunity to outsource any parts of the project?
Yeah, absolutely, Kieran, and we fully encourage that. So you just put them in as consultancy, and you can actually spend up to 60% of the totals on consultancy. Although I would say that is rare, and our technologists, they don't usually green light consultancy costs that exceed half of the project totals, but that's still a huge amount, of the available budget. So yeah, we completely encourage that. We recognize that it's likely. It's actually quite rare that companies can do it all themselves. Almost every application I've seen, there is a measure of consultancy.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions, folks, for Padraig?
Hi, Darragh O'Brien here. Just a question on that sourcing consultancy. Do you need to source from an approved EI list of consultants, or?
Definitely not, Darragh. We don't, to my knowledge, well, certainly my department do not even have an approved list of consultants. So you identify the best people you can to help you deliver the proposal, and we're never gonna query that, to be honest.
Thank you.
Feel free, folks, to come in. Anyone else with any questions now that might be in your minds? You'll also have the opportunity as well after the breakout groups when we come to when we have a discussion with SAMCO and Cotter AgriTech. It'll be another opportunity. But if you have anything else there before we move forward, please come in.
Padraig, on Mike Casey here, on the organization innovation aspect of it, funding is clearly available for upskilling and training of your own staff members. Does it have to be specifically around new investment in R&D or innovation, or could it be for existing, I suppose, business today?
So, Mike, there's the funding doesn't cover training.
Okay.
Yeah. So if where the one there is an operational excellence offer. But it's not my department, but I could probably, if you reach out to me, I can put you in touch with the right people. That would be where you're doing a type of business innovation proposal, but it's much bigger. It might, it'll go way over, maybe it's €1 million kind of thing. And sometimes we have a business innovation piece of that, but training is allowed under that. It's usually where people are putting in much, much bigger systems. Enterprise resource planning systems, for example, and they might be transforming the whole company from bottom to top. And training's allowable under that, but it's not allowable under this. So for us, it needs to be like digitalization is a good example, but it could be any kind of reorganization of the business. Once the goal is kind of streamlined, higher efficiency. That's the kind of things and there just needs to be that element of risk putting it in there. And yeah, digitalization is what we see nearly all the time under those organizational ones, for example. So our threshold for R&D is actually very, very low. It just needs to be new for the company and have some measure of risk. That's good enough. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thanks, Padraig.
No problem.
Padraig, just another question there. In terms of, let's say, different maybe organization size of a company, and depending on whether one is an Enterprise Ireland client or not, is it open to maybe smaller companies and maybe that might be Leo clients?
Oh yeah, absolutely, Kieran. Yeah, it's like you don't need to be a client of any agency to come in, but if you're not, you become a client of one or the other as part of the process. Because either if you're big enough for EI, there's two parts to the assessment. There's a commercial assessment and there's a technical assessment. And it'll be either an EI person or a Leo person who'll do, or Nuderos representative who'll do the commercial piece, and then we have a whole group of tech assessors that'll do the technical piece. So if you're not a client, you can still apply, but you'll become a client as part of the process. And yeah, companies of all sizes. You know, we've had plenty of applications from companies of like, you know, 2 people, and they're driving it, and they can do it very successfully.
Okay, very good. So thanks for that, Padraig. Any other questions, folks?
I had a quick question, just more on the consultancy piece again. Is there a requirement for the companies to be Irish-based consultants if you had to do like some kind of a vendor or something that was outside of Ireland?
There isn't a requirement, Donald. The only small limitation is you can spend 60% of the total on outside consultants, right? But if they're outside Ireland, no more than 50% of the project costs can go outside of Ireland.
Yeah.
So that could limit it.
Yeah.
But no, there's no requirement. And in my experience, those margins are really quite wide enough to accommodate all sorts. So we will be saying, no, like, get the best consultants you can from wherever you can. You're in the business. You're spending your half of the money that's going on this is your own. So we know you'll make the best choices. So pick the best ones, and it's more than likely you won't fall foul of those limits. But again, what you can do is you can send me your outline. I can provide that advice, for example, just to remind you. And usually we find companies are well able to stay within the limits.
Quick question, Padraig. What about reimbursement timelines? You know, you have to demonstrate that you got the money in your account first of all, but also in terms of payment back, what time frames roughly are we looking at?
So you have usually all of those timelines are in the letter of offer, but say as a rule of thumb, it's typically you get 3 years to complete the project, but usually companies complete the project anywhere from like 6 months to 18 months, or maybe certainly 2 years. You know, that's the norm for these agile ones, and you can build in the drawdown points that make sense for you during that. So some companies might like to spread it out evenly so it doesn't negatively impact cash flow. Other ones, they might have a particular block of work. They know they've got a milestone. They might have to spend half the money to get to milestone A, a quarter to milestone B, and then the final quarter, you know, at the project end. So you can build that in to suit yourself. We don't impose those type of timelines at all. It's often dictated by the project itself. The company can set those milestones themselves.
Okay, thanks very much, folks, for those questions. We'll have another opportunity after the breakout groups to have some more questions as well with the white group. So what I'd like to do now is we'll move to the next topic. I want to give you a short orientation here on Miro. So in the breakout rooms, we're going to start those rooms very shortly. I just want to give you a short orientation about Miro. So you see the link there in the chat. You can click on that now. It's optional. You don't need to do it. But if you'd like to maybe get the best experience in the breakout rooms, have a click on that link. You can just directly connect on the Miro board for this workshop without even a sign in, right? So you can directly connect there. And going to point you to a couple of quick tips here, right? So bottom right, first of all, right, so is the navigation for zooming in and out of the board. So it's essentially a large whiteboard. So you can use those, or you can use the roller mouse function if you have a roller mouse. Top right here, number 2, I'm going to identify leaders now shortly for each of the breakout teams. So whoever is leading in your breakout team, if you want to follow them in the board, you can click on the top right of your board here and find the name and follow that person by clicking on their name, and you'll appear on their location. Over on the left-hand side here, you'll see the third step. Watch this pointer. You want it on blue ideally. That means you can select, so you'll be able to add information, move a post-it around, add some comments from your side. Use the blue selection on the left side here of the tool bar. Fourth point, just to mention around post-its, there's going to be post-its in your breakout board anyway, so you don't need to add any more. But in order to move one, you click once on it and you can move a post-it into a particular location. If you want to add some text, you double click onto the post-it and then you can add text in that post-it. Okay, so that's a short orientation. Going to talk to you a little bit now about what we're going to do before we break up. So we're going to break up for about 30 minutes now. And we're going to go into 4 different rooms, and we're going to look at this objective here. So we're going to do introductions in the team. So everyone that when we go into the breakout teams, feel free to turn on your videos and your audio. There'll be introductions, and then we're going to have a look at some technology opportunities to solve agricultural challenges. So we're going to have a discussion around that whole topic. And then towards the end of your discussion, to think about, how feasible are these opportunities as an innovation project, and this will be the sort of focus, I suppose, and the objective, what we'd like to get from the workshop piece now in where we do the breakouts. So here you see the instructions, okay? There's 4 steps here for the next 30 minutes, okay? So we'll follow those. They'll also be on the board when we break you into the breakout room. If you'd like now, here on the top right of this screen, you see the Miro skills practice. Feel free to come in and try and move some of those post-its around. Double click at it. This is the main thing you'll need to be able to do if you'd like to use the Miro in the breakout room. Move a few of these post-its around on the top right here. Double click, add some text. Bit of chance there to play around with that. We've 4 teams in the breakouts now. We're setting those up there at the moment. I just to give you an introduction into the team leads. So Tom Fitzmaurice is going to lead team 1. He's the gateway manager for the IMAR Technology Gateway based at MTU. Mike Casey is business development manager based in ACE, the AgriTech Center of Excellence, also at MTU. Fionn Foley is a lecturer in the Department of STEM at MTU, and he's working with us on the Agri-Team Innovator Program, and I'll be taking meeting those that are going to Team 4. Okay, if you need any help at any particular stage now going forward in each of the teams, you can move this red post-it here to the left or to the right, or move it off this, and we will come to your help. Or if you need any help, you can put it in the chat and we'll come and give you some help there. So in a moment now, we're going to move you into the rooms. Use the opportunity, I guess, to have some good discussion in these areas. Hopefully some of you will get to meet some new faces, maybe make some new connections, and to discuss AgriTech in general, to discuss some technology opportunities, and look to see maybe where then there afterwards that we could make some connections for you. So just give me a moment there, and we'll kickstart the breakout rooms. We'll give you a hint as we're going, as the time is ticking on. So we're going to come back into, we're going to take about 25 minutes or so based on our time frame now, and we'll put a hint in when there's 5 minutes to go in the breakout. So just bear with me one moment, and you can try that skills practice. And if you want to take a moment to get connected there on Miro, work away. Any question before we go, feel free to come in now as well. Otherwise, we'll see you in the breakout room. We're going to take a short look here. This is our final slide as such. So we've got 3 topics I want to cover, right? So we're going to get an update from each team just on what were the main, thoughts in terms of challenges, in terms of potential opportunities for innovation projects. And then we're going to have a short discussion with Cotter AgriTech and SAMCO on their experience. And then we're going to just do a short summary of what we've covered and what we're doing next with the AgriTeam Innovator project. Okay, so I'd like to call on each team then. So we had actually 3 teams as it turned out. So Tom, maybe we'll take team 1 first. If you'd like to come in on the screen and just give a short update, or anybody else from the team, if you'd like to contribute as well, please feel free to come in. So we do kind of a minute each, folks, a minute or 2 minutes each, if that's okay.
Yeah, perfect, Kieran. Do you want to, are we stuck on this slide, or can we bring in team 1's challenges and opportunities there?
No problem. Yeah.
And at this stage, I'd also like to call on Vincent and who we got here? What's the last name there? From Cotter AgriTech, that was in our group there. The two boys had great contributions there. So I might let them, I know we've only got 2 or 3 minutes for this. Are you there, lads? Vincent? And I can't see the other.
Yeah, Nick, do you want to go first?
Nick and Vincent, yeah, maybe just a quick wrap up from each of you lads there on what we were doing.
Yeah, sure, I can go on the agricultural challenges, and Vincent, if you want to come in on the technology. Very briefly, sustainability is the top of the agenda. I don't think that's a secret to anyone. Biodiversity quickly follows that, and when you put the two of those together, the next obvious problem I come to is social license. I think given that agriculture in the main is funded with public money, this isn't going to continue without social license. So I suppose solve those 2 problems. You're then also solving that 3rd problem of social license. There are a myriad of other problems that we have below them, responsible use of antimicrobials, soil health, but again, they're all tied to that primary agenda of less methane emissions, less pollution, and therefore then maintaining the ability of agriculture to have continuity of existence with public acceptance. And if we want public money to fund the sector and fund more R&D, we've got to be serious and have those things at the top of the agenda.
Yeah, we touched on a lot of the kind of key pain points, challenges, and then we also looked at the opportunities, and it can kind of be divided into loose silos such as hardware, and that mechanical improvements in mechanicals, where and also IoT systems. Basically, every hardware device on a farm is going to have an IoT system involved. So you basically have precision control. Then you got bioware, basically, and then the bioware can be divided into kind of like the animals and the crops that you've grown, and then the further processing. And then of course the software and inventory management systems. So what we're seeing is kind of like a heuristic. In a lot of cases, the farms will become a lot more smarter, and also the supply chain is going to be a lot more smarter. Provenance is going to be very important. And we're actually seeing the definition on what the farm of the future is going to look like. It might be completely different from what we're looking at now. And there is also going to be the growth of the urban farmer, and basically brownfield sites becoming farms as well. So lots of opportunities there.
Very good, guys. Thanks for that update. What sort of, let's say if we was to just generally ask the question, what kind of opportunities would come to mind, say in the top of your minds as opportunities for innovation projects?
Well, I think if one has a circular economy mindset and sustainability mindset, and basically draw down from a range of available and already tried and tested technology, and basically come up with customized solutions for particular problems. And the hope is that those solutions can then be scalable, because at the end of the day, probably the market is not outside. The market isn't Ireland, but Ireland can be used as a test case in which you can actually export this technology or these products elsewhere outside Ireland.
Very good. Thanks, guys. Anyone else from Team 1 like to come in? Any other comments on Team 1? And great stuff. And in the short period of time, you covered a lot of topics in the challenge and opportunity side. So well done to everyone.
Yeah, just super briefly. Ideas are as cheap as table salt. Everything is all about execution. I think as a sector, that's what we have to work on. We have to work on helping young people out of college, people with new ideas, with the execution. So be that accelerator program, something particularly I'd be strong on advocating for that's done in Europe, is having a national network of demonstration farms to test new solutions, because you need to get on farm with something as quickly as possible. Otherwise, you're $250,000 down the line with something that people don't want. And if you want to have agri-tech innovators who can go the distance, we need to have that as a national facility available to everyone.
Just to add to that, investment funds for for innovation, to accelerate innovation and consortium development.
Perfect. Thanks, guys. It's great contribution. We're taking a note of all these points here as well. So we'll be following up on a number of these comments. So thanks very much for the input. Yeah. Okay, we'll move maybe to team 2 if that's okay. So Mike, if you can come in, or if any of the team would like to come in and give an update on team 2 discussions on challenges and opportunities.
So does Barry or Padraig want to talk here, or do you want me to take it, lads? Or
I'm probably happier if you go with it, Mike.
Yeah, no problem. So I suppose in terms of challenges to start with, some of the stuff that was mentioned was around geographic location, the challenge to regulatory requirements around that. That the feedback is that there's a lot more challenges for scalability than in a global market, because the requirements vary from country to country. Some further challenges around the availability of skills, to IT consultancy, matching the right skills to the right problem, so to speak, and getting support there. Getting the right idea and focusing in on that, and that there's a lot going on in this sector today. So it's I suppose highlighting what are the big ticket items, what are the low-hanging stuff that can be addressed immediately. One of the other challenges in this sector and industry is around the reluctance to change by the end consumers. Old habits, trying to change them, bring innovation into the industry going forward. In terms of opportunities, while I suppose we spoke about IT skills, there seems to be an agreement between Ireland and UK in terms of there's no crossover of there's enough business within the country for 15,000 farmers, I think is what was mentioned today in this country, with further in same the UK rather, with no risk there. So there's further opportunity, I suppose, to go beyond that in terms of scope. Defining customer requirements is something that needs to be looked at. What are the customer requirements? Educating customer around the area of carbon, in that, while it's been going on almost 20 years, the discussion, the thought process is that someday that will come to a head. How do we, provide service around that? How do we educate the sector in that space, etc.? And then the regulatory bodies enforcing the legislation going forward. Anything you want to add there, lads?
No, that was pretty succinct, Mike.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great stuff. Thanks very much, guys. Thanks to team 2. And Fionn, we'll just briefly go to team 3 just to get your update, folks.
Yeah, no problem at all. Yeah, I suppose we had some good ideas and some, I suppose, very, very obvious challenges, which are kind of current as well. We had some good ideas there, as I say. Certainly, I could just briefly step through them. Maybe we can bring in Robert or Debbie or some of the other participants as well. But certainly the availability of skills, which links quickly and easily to the labour shortages that the AgriTech is seeing. With that as well, changing in costs currently. Obviously, you've had the Brexit, and now we have the issues in Ukraine. It's really a nightmare for pricing and meeting the costs to produce the product. A huge reluctance to change as well is something that we would see. And I think that kind of marries on with the adoption of tech issue that we're highlighting. From the opportunities of that, then, to collaborate with other sectors who have this type of technology in use and adopted, it's something that we can see as very, very important to develop, and it should have a high impact in terms of an opportunity there. Similarly, tech and data and the use of Internet of Things and digital transformations, how exactly can this be achieved? And what are the opportunities the AgriTech can really apply to get the win as soon as possible with this? And I think the highest impact can be seen with that digital data, Internet of Things, and collaborating with the sectors who already have this in place. Okay, Robert, maybe if you want to add any comments there.
Yeah, I suppose just on the last comment about collaborative with already people in the sector, you know, there's no point reinventing a shiny wheel if the wheel before that was invented or in place by another company in the sector is working. So I suppose it's about leveraging off other companies and finding what they, I suppose, best fit for them and maybe utilizing some of their experience. I suppose agriculture needs to move maybe at a faster pace maybe than it currently is. And that's nothing wrong against agriculture. It's just a seasonal business. So it takes us in years what the tech industry can do in weeks and months. So it's something we have to be very quick and precise about. And I think that's important. And, you know, collecting and analyzing data, if you don't know what you're trying to measure, how can you judge whether it's a success or not? So I think there are important things that have opportunities that we have to get better at doing to be able to leverage those things to move forward.
Great stuff. Thanks very much for that, guys. Really interesting thoughts there, you know, and I think looking across all the different teams, you know, some very interesting findings from your short time discussing the challenges and the opportunities, I think, right? So, and what we'll do now, folks, we're going to move to the next piece, right? Before we start to summarize, right, we're going to have a short discussion with Robert, with Nick, and also with Padraig. So if you'd like to switch on the screens, guys, and the audio, we'll just have a short chat. Maybe Nick, Robert, first of all, to you guys, I suppose, in terms of, you know, your maybe short background for everyone, so that, you know, you can give us a short update maybe on your companies, what you're doing, and also, you know, your experience with the Agile Innovation Fund. What's it enabled you to do from an innovation point of view?
Okay, I go first, Nick.
Take it away.
Yeah, Elder Melon and all that. So my name's Robert Shine. The company's name is SAMCO, Agriculture and Manufacturing, and it's been 25 years in existence. We currently have over 50 staff directly employed here in Adair, County Limerick. We're involved in agriculture. We were milking cows up until 15, 16 years ago. I had an agricultural contracting business. I've always been involved in the ag sector for many, many years growing up. For us, I suppose, are most well known for the system where we can lay the degradable mulch film on the soil, and from that then utilize the heat in the ground to grow maize crop, which is a tropical plant. So that's the core of our business. It's our bread and butter, as we say. But from that, of course, we have a bit of an attitude here to, you know, never say die, or never say if it doesn't want to change, do we change it? And I suppose that's been the ethos, and we've always been involved in something, or modifying, or inventing, or changing something, or trying to invent something. Sometimes it happens that way. We try and force innovation, which was the old way of doing things, more looking for those opportunities, but that's kind of mainly about. It's a family-run company. There's 4 of the family members directly involved in it, and we have staff here with us over 25 years, some of them still. So we have a lot of experience and innovation and history built up within the company, which can be difficult when you're very, very few competitors in the market, which means you have to be innovating on your own all the time. You can't be looking at the competitors, what they're doing. So that's basically where we are.
Very good, Robert. Thanks for that. And just while you're on the camera, and would you just share a little bit with us your experience with the Agile Innovation Fund, and if you want to put anything towards Padraig, you can, and just tell us what it's been able to, I suppose, what sort of benefit it's brought to you in the innovation project.
Well, I suppose for us in the past, we had been doing, we're established company now, so we're a medium-sized company. In the past, we were small, so we were working on R&D grants in the past, but they were very paperwork heavy at the start. And if you weren't experienced or didn't know how to do these R&D grant applications, they could take time. Enterprise Ireland were always there to help out with paperwork or understanding. But what I liked about the Agile Innovation Fund, it was very quick and reactive. So we could make a decision and we know we'd have an understanding or a very quick turnaround on a project. And it was one particular project that seemed to fit very well, which was a bale trailer, the self-loading unit, which suited us to what we were doing. We needed a quick turnaround on the process. And that's where the Agile Innovation was very reactive, like I said, and it allowed us to move very quickly and smoothly with the project. And the section drawdown as a help if you're a startup company or a smaller company, maybe who couldn't fund this all the way to the end. But definitely it was a very good idea for EI to try and bring this on board, especially for the small and the lower medium companies to be able to avail of this and not be bogged down in paperwork. That oftentimes their mind was somewhere else trying to get on with the project rather than tranching through paperwork and cash flows and things, which were always issues in the past for the smaller companies to have adequately done enough because everything was on the same level as the medium or bigger companies applying for the old R&D grant systems.
Yeah, and it's interesting to hear. I guess we've been able to develop a new product using that fund. I think that's where the use case for SAMCO is. Thanks for that, Robert. And just maybe Nick, to bring you in now, maybe same questions, bit of background to Cotter AgriTech and also to your use of the fund. Just on the mute. Nick, yeah, no bother.
My name is Nick Cotter. I'm a co-founder of Cotter AgriTech, which I run with my brother Jack, and some of the other family members are involved. Again, always been involved in agriculture. I grew up in a sheep farm. We were raising beef and we were milking cows before that as well. Have set up a number of farm diversification businesses on the farm. We sell firewood nationwide. We also direct sell the lamb that's on the farm to homeowners and local restaurants. And I suppose we're fierce curious on the farm, and that's what led us to this Cotter AgriTech opportunity. So we manufacture and sell a piece of sheep handling equipment that basically makes handling sheep and lambs faster, easier, and safer for farmers. Very on topic, considering labor shortages on farm and how tight margins are given rising energy costs and all the rest of these problems that we successfully identified earlier. We also have a piece of software that we use to identify and target sheep with drugs instead of going in there with blanket treatment. And we would have big issues with resistance to these drugs, where these drugs aren't working anymore because we're using them, we're using too many of them and we're using them inappropriately. So again, on trend. So two aspects to it. For some farmers, we sell them just the software if they're already equipped with suitable hardware, and for other farmers, we sell them both. I suppose what led us to Agile Innovation is we had invented this piece of hardware at home. We were kind of doing slow development ourselves, and to get some help from Robert as well with guiding us as someone just starting out, not really having a clue what we were doing. And Robert was very helpful in doing that, and fair play to him. I suppose we were a year and a half into development last March, and we had reached a point where we hadn't arrived at something that we needed to get to market, and we needed more research and development to achieve something that someone would actually buy. So we applied for the Agile Innovation to essentially create a test group of 20 farmers around Ireland and the UK. We work with the UCD Lions Farm and with Queen's University Belfast to basically iterate the hardware. We created 3 different prototypes, continuously iterating over the testing period of about 12 months. Using this all the time on farm, and then we also developed the software alongside it. So what it has enabled us to do is about 3 weeks ago, we actually formally launched the hardware and software solutions at the Lamb Agri Show. So really, without the Agile Innovation, it bridged that gap for us that otherwise we wouldn't have had the funding to push all the way through to launch, because now we're revenue generating and the business can keep going, because the longer it takes to get to that point, you're counting down your days towards running out of money. And most businesses don't fail for lack of trying or lack of want to succeed. They simply fail because you run out of money and you don't have any other options. I would reiterate what Robert said. I am not an accountant. I hate paperwork, despite having to do it all of the time, and despite managing myself into a role that mostly involves doing it. But it is very helpful to not have a big heavy workload in doing it. I've never had the experience of the older R&D grants, and by the sounds of it, that was
lucky. Lucky you, yeah.
But it's a very short process. I mean, we're applying for a second Agile Innovation grant at the moment to reiterate version 2 of what we've got, and to continue to build out different functionality within the software to solve other problems around identifying animals with superior genetics and a few more things. Yeah, so super easy to do it, and I suppose it's non-dilutive, which is a big deal for someone like us, because the longer it's yeah, it's a great fit, and fair play to Enterprise Ireland, because you're supporting the established companies like SAMCO, but you're also supporting someone like us who really is only getting started on the journey.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say. It's interesting, the two applications, one established company and yourselves starting out on that journey now. So absolutely, it's interesting to see the applications. And thanks for sharing that, Nick, with us. So I know we're gone a little bit on time. So just to Padraig, if you'd like to come in with any comments on what the guys had talked about, or anyone from the any participant, if you have any questions for the two guys, please pop them in the chat or come in on the audio, and we can put those questions to the guys.
Thanks, Kieran. And honestly, it was such two brilliant stories there from Robert and Nick. And, I was delighted to hear that feedback. And yeah, on the paperwork side of things, Agile was redesigned to be straightforward. So don't let the sound of paperwork put you off. It's much more straightforward than you think. And if you're a client of Leo, they'll usually appoint an advisor and or a mentor who'll walk you through that process and work on the drafts with you. And usually you're just telling the story. Like Nick and Robert did there. They told a brilliant story. You're putting it in your own words. You're solving real world problems, and it doesn't need to be a big opus. It just needs to be a problem that you're solving with a solution you've come up with. And and actually probably the nicest thing I heard of all was the fact that Robert had advised Dick, and that sort of cross fertilization of advice and talent and ideas. That's exactly what we want to foster. That's just so encouraging, and I take my hat off to the two guys on their proposals, and honestly, looking at all the other names here, there's no reason why that can't be all of you as well. So get in touch and let's get that conversation going.
Absolutely, I reiterate that. Thanks very much, Padraig. Any questions for the guys from anybody? Feel free to come on the audio or pop in any question there. I just see one coming in there, Donal.
Yeah,
you want to talk through it, Donal, altogether?
No, I was just curious. Actually, I think it was Nick that kind of sparked the idea that do you have like an actual test bed or a smart farm or something to try out, or is it all, or do people just try out their ideas on their own farms? Is that how things are? Because that's what we see in other sectors, like you have smart cities, or you have the manufacturing plant tries something, and then let's ideas, spur from there. I'm just curious, what's the plan, I suppose, for this cluster?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I think it's one that's been brought up in other workshops actually that we've done as well. Is the need maybe for more opportunities to test out technology solutions. So it's something we're looking into. There are some cases already where that's possible to do. Some farms around the country, but I think there's a lot of scope even for more opportunities to get more testing done, especially where you have scenarios like what you're offering, Donal, being able to test interconnections of systems and technology solutions, would be very advantageous before trying to bring something to market, as an example, right? So yeah, it's a very good question. Absolutely. Any other comments, folks, on that? If anybody else on Donal's question, or any question for Nick or Robert or Padraig?
I've just got one question. Sometimes, your project plan changes. How flexible is, say, that, EI to changes in project plan and halfway through a process?
Yeah, I can just cover that briefly, just from my own 2 cents. R1 changed, particularly because we under budgeted on prototype costs, but that was partly because stainless steel decided to do that on us. And also, typical youth, you always underestimate how long it takes and how expensive it is. So the project took about 4 or 5 months longer than what we planned, and we under budgeted. But EI were fantastic, which siphoning money out of where we over budgeted and moving it forward. So you don't have to be worried about having the absolute perfect plan. Get in as good a plan as you can get in, but get the thing in and get the ball rolling.
Thanks, Nick. I'm delighted. Nothing better than getting an actual case study experience on that. But just in terms of the rules, you can change the budgeting for any category of cost by more than 50%. So once it doesn't alter the cost in another by more than 50%. So there's a lot of scope there. We expect that or not that we don't expect it'll change, but we're comfortable with change because there's risk involved in these projects. So it's okay if it doesn't work out exactly as you did it. And to be honest, because of the level of risk, even if the project doesn't work out, okay, that's devastating. It's rough for everyone, but we'll still pay out once you've done what you said you were going to do. That's the nature of R&D.
I think it's important, and as Nick has said, in the older days with the R&D, it was 20% only, I think, was allowed to be moved, which was a bit tighter, but then your budgets are a bit more constrained and bigger, so I had to be tighter. But yeah, it's a budget you're doing. You don't know. Like we made a plan last year with the bale trailer, the same thing, and we had higher costs in one area than the other. You don't know how much traveling you have to do these trial farms and things, but I would say it's one of the most flexible and reassuring things, because otherwise you'd be trying to cut yourself back on an area without saying, look, I need to do these extra 2 days and I'll take the budget from there. And I know I have it in the back of my mind rather than trying to be doing it. That's why I like the Agile over the old system. It's just a lot more flexible and quicker to be reactive, you know.
And just to add a last question there, R&D tax credits, you probably maximize that. That's part of the...
Yeah, we've done them in the past. I haven't done them the last couple of years because few reasons. They're very time heavy, overly time heavy. I've looked at the knowledge development box as well over the time with patents and so on. Again, great. Unfortunately, we're more focused on growth rather than trying to get tax money back out of the government. So we're concentrating more with our staff on that. The bigger companies could set aside an accountant who, unfortunately, in a family-run company, we have a lot of bad habits put in over the years where paperwork mightn't have been as tight and as, I suppose, neatly kept for anyone else to look at it over the years. So we always found with R&D tax credits, it was always hard just to try and justify, because they take out all travel expenses, everything, and they strip it out, and then you have to offset it against the EI grant, and you pay someone to do the work, and all of a sudden you're saying, I lost a week of my life for the amount of money I got. I'd have better spent that somewhere else driving some other project or innovation. So we stopped doing them 3 years ago now, I'd say we stopped. And knowledge development box, I looked at it twice, but never gone down the road because I think it's more hassle than it's worth at the moment for us the size we are.
Just a little snippet from the past, if you don't mind. I haven't heard anybody mention about the fact that when you want to do research and development on grass, for example, like we went back to the bale wrapping, square bales and that.
Alfie, maybe just if you push one little bit closer to the microphone where you're just a little bit far away from us.
Okay, well, is that any better?
Yeah.
Okay. Historically, we actually flew our bale wrapper out to New Zealand, and I spent a month out there because there's no grass here. No, when we were working on square bales, etc., they didn't exist here. So we flew to Germany and did the same there. So that's where the R&D funding came in those days. It was able to enable us to do those things, you know. Imagine flying a big square bale wrapper out on an airplane to New Zealand. It's unheard of today, but it could have been, you know, it certainly helped us get ahead of the posse at the time. So I'll leave it to you, lads. Cheers.
Thanks for that, Alfie. Yeah, absolutely.
I think it just shows there again what Alfie said about how agriculture can be sometimes slow because there are yearly innovations we have, whereas other tech centers change every week or every month. So I think it's important. Sometimes you can't wait. You just have to do these things, and it's important for people to move quickly. And again, not to harp on, but that's where the agile innovation is quick. You can think of something to happen in a month's time and get organized with it, you know.
Very good. So folks, we're going to stop with the questions there. I just want to share with you, thanks very much guys for contributing, much appreciated. And hopefully folks, you've got some good leads there and pointers from the guys in terms of their experience in the innovation and in the funding, the Agile Innovation Fund from Enterprise Ireland as well. So just to sort of conclude, I guess, in the workshop, right, at this point, just to mention to you folks, I suppose, right, we're going to take a look internally. So with the AgriTeam Innovator program that we're running now, we're connecting across the MTU, the Munster Technological University, with the cluster, the ACE AgriTech Centre of Excellence, IMAR Research Centre. So each of the guys you would have met some in the breakout rooms. We're going to take a look at those opportunities, and we're also going to run over the next weeks ahead one-to-one workshops with interested companies as well, to try and support the identification of some opportunities and to develop some innovation projects. So if you have any other questions, you can follow up with me here. You can see on the screen my email contact there. So please follow up if you'd like to get involved in any of these projects, or if you'd like any more information on any of the topics we discussed. Please follow up with me and I'll talk with you directly on any questions you might have. So thanks very much, folks, for attending the workshop. And we're going to make the recording for the discussions we've had, except for the breakout rooms. We didn't record that piece. We'll make the recordings available for you to listen back as well to any of the content as you wish. Okay, so thanks very much for attending, and talk to you again soon.
Thanks, Kieran.
Thanks, Kieran.
Well done.
Thanks, Kieran. and all.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks all. Cheers.
See you, everyone.